Good morning. Good morning. Decentralized
morning.
TV and the crew.
Morning.
How we doing?
We have a full house this morning.
We've got the Doge Lord on site.
Oh,
The man, the myth.
oh, what's up, guys?
Outstanding.
Hold on.
Well, let's take a peek at where Bitcoin is. Meanwhile, everyone lines up and gets ready. As Brad had posted over the weekend, where are we headed? So we're looking at the 3-day. We broke that channel. We are still on our way down. The big question, and you'll see the poll here in the DC stream. Are we double bottoming? Are we going straight down to our buy points? Are we going to come back up? What in the world is going to happen? Well, the interesting part here is going to be on the monthly. The monthly chart ends or closes this Wednesday. And if you take a look at where we're at, we did not confirm the 50 moving average as support. We are below it, but we have till Wednesday to confirm. If we confirm it as support, so it rallies back up, there's a few rumors that there's too many shorts on the line, so we may have a short squeeze coming up, or we just continue down to our buy areas. May the gods smile in our favor. Now let's look at traditional. I will let Brad Smith, Brad Smith, take over and show us traditional where we are.
Yeah, so let me just, I wanted to kind of pull up SPY here real quick. Jaime, if you wouldn't mind pulling that chart up for me.
Yes, sir.
Right now, futures are down quite a bit. It's in continuation of what we saw from Friday. One of the big reasons is because of what we heard from the Fed. If you guys didn't catch that, the Fed was over in Jackson Hole talking about the overall state of the economy, interest rates, inflation, and all that good stuff. Mentioned the word more pain for consumers, and then also hinted around that we'd have to bring unemployment up potentially to solve the inflation problem. So it is all hands on deck, and it is let's take care of inflation at all costs. Kind of a switch from what we saw just about 18 months ago from Jerome Powell when he was mentioning about how there was no plans to see any kind of reasonable rate hikes in the immediate future. So a complete 180. Now, some people are saying that another 180 or another U-turn for Jerome Powell might not be possible or isn't likely, and maybe it isn't. But we are seeing some signs of deflation take place. And my concern here, Jaime and crew, is that maybe Jerome Powell is being a little bit too aggressive, or is he just talking too aggressively? That'll have to remain to be seen when we see CPI numbers come out for next month, and then the Fed will then continue to make their policy. But I gotta say, if they raise it another 75 basis points, which could be possible, I think that we could see a lot of turmoil in the overall markets, which would bleed over to Bitcoin as well.
Absolutely. It could be a setup. Go ahead, Peter.
How's the tech? How? Let's take a look at the overall tech stocks if we can. Do you have something there, Brad, for that? Because Bitcoin tends to follow the overall tech kind of meta game.
Pull up QQQ, Jaime.
QQ. Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's right. QQQ. Perfect. So we're if you overlay Bitcoin to this, it's kind of like a lagging indicator of sorts. And so we're seeing very similarly, and this is something I was checking out earlier this morning, is kind of how the overall tech market is dealing with some of these Fed changes early this morning. And we'll see. We'll continue to look. There's a lot of I had told you, well, I'm not right yet, but I had said I see us going right back down, like totally going back down. I've said this so many times over the last couple of months. I still see in a September where we'll probably still be going through a little bit of whiff-waffing. I mean, the Fed and the kind of the anxiety that they're creating right now, and Brad, I know you understand this, right? In the market is like no one knows what's going on. There's this right. Kind of like, when is the hammer going to drop? When is the other shoe going to drop? How is the real estate market's going to affect this? how are the international markets going to look at this, right? We're looking to see what some of the international politics look like, because there's been some ruminations that we might end up bailing out like Japan and other countries from all of this craziness. So we're just going to have to wait and see. But I totally foresee us looking at in October, November, pretty depressed. But then we'll be moving back up from then. What do you say, Brad?
I'd say that lines up pretty much with election time as well. Lots of people speculating that we could see some more treacherousness, if that's a word, going into the elections, and then after the elections take place, we could see a rally. I think that's probably the most likely scenario. So it's almost as if technical and fundamental analysis kind of line up right around that time. So I'd agree.
So what would you? I'm sorry, I'm just going to cut you off real quick. Since the midterms are coming up, is putting Bitcoin or cryptocurrency as one of your policies for good? Is that a good thing on the ticket this year, or is that a negative on the ticket?
Ooh.
I think it's good. I think it's good, especially for the Republican side. Not to get into politics, but for the side that wants to take over, I think it's good.
And we're going to go into that in this show today. There is one advice, though, a very good advice given to us by Robert Rathman. I don't know how to answer the poll, up, down, whatever it is, but dollar cost average and HODL for me. That's the best way to enter in these unknown times, everyone. Set up a time, let that engine eat.
DCA,
Yep, absolutely.
baby.
My kids just took all their birthday money and bought Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Smart
Yes.
kids.
You'll see college,
That's awesome.
everything running.
How did they do it? What website did they use?
We use Coinbase.
Nice.
Excellent.
Nice.
Excellent. A wallet each, or are you doing a family wallet?
Family wallet.
Outstanding. Beautiful. It's good to know.
That's awesome.
Now let's move on to, here we go. I will give you the wheel. Brad.
Yeah, so I wanted to bring this first article up to you guys, and definitely want to hear from the DCTV OGs for sure. Tam, Jaime, Peter, of course, but one of a very famous Bitcoin bull mentioned that about Bitcoin crashing 68%, and we just got done talking about how Bitcoin could go even lower. One bull says the latest crypto winter is a warm winter, and she mentions the adoption of Web3 being kind of the I don't want to say soft landing, because we have certainly crashed quite a bit, but the adoption of Web3 and kind of like the fast evolution of that could result in a slow or in a faster crypto winter, if you will, or a warm winter is what she's calling it. So Edith Young is a general partner at Race Capital, talks about this in general, and I wanted to get your guys' opinion on this. Is Web3, could that be more of a easier cushion or a softer landing than we've seen in past crypto winters? Because I haven't lived through them like you guys have, so I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that.
I don't think her reasoning has anything. I actually agree with her that we'll have a warm winter, but I don't see the correlation to Web3. I mean, the people who use Web3 is such a small percentage. We're still so early with crypto adoption. I mean, it's not big enough to bounce crypto in the manner that I think she's looking at.
And Don Fran even mentioned, I was thinking more both sides wanted Bitcoin or crypto, not because they agree to pick up some more votes, going back on to the other one. So there's these political areas coming in to play with the markets overall, which affects the crypto winter timing. We're going to see as you're seeing on the screen, the crypto troubles, and that's where Tampa and I, all of us will go into the regulation of the stable coins. And in terms of the timing, as Peter had mentioned earlier, and the overall chart of Bitcoin, historic chart, the halving chart, you'll see that we're near the bottom. So the timing of everything, we may be seeing the bottom itself show itself find its footing, and then return back up. So I believe her timing is correct. And the Web3 involves a lot of the altcoins taking off with ETH, the merge occurring, which involves services like unstoppable domains and other technologies coming to the forefront. So that should be a warming.
What is fascinating to me is that we have, and this is something that I've talked about a lot, is that if you look at Bitcoin as a technology startup and remove the monetary connections to it, then what would you do with any technology startup to measure its growth and to measure its adoption and to measure its influence? Well, it would be user adoption, right? User accessibility, tooling, infrastructure building, right? Networking, network partners, growth in different markets and in different industries. So if you look at Bitcoin from a technology startup perspective, the thing that really colors the opinions of people around Bitcoin is the price action. But if you remove it from price action and you just look at it as a Bitcoin startup, then it is still the fastest growing global adoption technology startup that's ever been created. It just so happens to have a monetary policy that's attached to it. And it's an unfortunate optics part of the game. But if you look at crypto's troubles and this warm winter and this article, I think we've had truly a kind of warm winter of sorts. I think we've gone through most of the paper hands. I think we've
Agreed.
gone through most of the shakeout. And what is fascinating, just as we saw in the ICO craze of 16, 17, moving into 18, and then from there we moved into the DeFi world and then moved into NFTs in 2020, we often saw a fairly significant implosion of projects through each of those recession points, right? And so I feel like with Celsius and Luna and 3 Arrows and all that stuff, I think that was the implosion moment that we had a couple months ago. And now we're kind of shaking all the dust off, and we're still going to have a little bit of a pullback and drawdown as, the bankers want to get their homies in, which I completely understand. Got to get the homies in last hurrah before we start pulling back up. So crypto's troubles and warm winter. Absolutely. I think we've had a warm winter. And for those who've been through the last 2 cycles, at least, tis but another scratch. That's all.
But a scratch. I could not agree more. And just to give some variants, Philip asked a good question. I think, what is Web3? This is all new to me. It is still being defined, but to oversimplify, what most people say when they talk about Web3 is the evolution of the internet. Web 1.0 was mainly just looking at what was online, a company's website. You could only look at it, see what they were about, whatever they offered to put online, a profile, whatever it was. Most of internet searching was simply just looking at what other people did.
Besides
Web 2,
email, it wasn't interactive.
Right. Web 2, exactly like what Greg just said, it becomes a little more interactive. You can pay bills online with a company. If you have a plumbing issue, you can reach out to a plumber. The plumber can come back, do a job for you, and you can pay them online. You can talk to them online, a little more interactive. Web 3, as it is being defined, again, oversimplified, is the removal of third parties for that interaction. It is more direct, peer-to-peer. I don't need a bank to pay that plumber that just came and did the work to me. I could pay him directly via Bitcoin and cryptocurrency channels. There's a lot of good reasons for this, but that's an oversimplified view of where we're going or trying to go with Web3.
And that's a beautiful point, Tam, you brought up, because as we've learned, even when Peter set up our teams at MetaFi, one of the first things he did as a CEO was to show us what Bitcoin is. Just like SMTP, Simple Mail Protocol, is for emailing that occurred in Web 2. Part of Web 3 is Bitcoin is a protocol for money, peer-to-peer, decentralized, no middleman in there. And that's part of this whole build that's occurring, which will be the next revolution, industrial revolution for us.
Decentralization, blockchain technologies, and token-based economics into Web 2.0.
Right.
That's essentially what it is.
I actually heard a great summary of Web 2, Web 1 versus Web 2, which is versus Web 3, and I don't think it's perfectly sticky, but I can appreciate the kind of categorization. So Web 1 is the transfer of content, and I'm sorry, Web 1 is the finding of content, and Web 2 is the transfer of value of content. So one is like Web 1 is, hey, there's content out there, there's cats and porn. The internet is running, baby. The internet is here. We found cats, right? So Web 1 is cats and porn. Web 2 is a transfer of value of content, right? Video, right? Streaming, all that. And Web 3 is the transfer of value in terms of monetary policy and new digital value. And so it's really just finding content, creating content, transfer of value is kind of the way that they've summarized. I've heard it summarized. I don't think it's exactly perfect, but I think it's a nice, I think it works pretty well.
Yeah, great.
Does. And I see Don Franz show. He's going to tell all his utilities, his service providers on Web 1. That's why he can't pay. I don't know if it works that way, Don.
I haven't upgraded yet.
Yeah. So, I mean, would you classify something like a Roblox as being kind of like a, I don't want to say early adopter, but just kind of like the beginning or start of like a Web3 process, just so our viewers have like a better understanding? Would something like Roblox be like an integration of Web3?
Well, certainly Roblox would be an example because it has the creative aspect of transfer of content or textual value. And then the bridge over to the transfer of monetary value. And so that's really where Web3 is that everything that we do digitally, in my opinion, and this is actually a powerful nugget, maybe we can noodle on for a little bit here, is that Web3, in my opinion, is going to be truly taken over in terms of we will put a dollar value to everything that we have online. And I think that mechanism is actually a good thing because we should know, for example, I would hearken to take a poll that nobody in this crowd knows. How much is your content worth? How much is all the LinkedIn stuff that you've posted on LinkedIn worth? How much is the stuff that Google has sucked from you worth? How much is the value of all the content, Brad, that you've given to YouTube to monetize on your behalf and you don't get jack shit from it? Like Web3 should avail us the tools and the technology to understand what our time spent online is worth. And we, as individuals, hopefully sovereign individuals, should have the ability to monetize said time online. And so Web3 / the metaverse, right, is going to be a world in which everything that we do online should have a known quantity, valuation, and transferability.
And I think that's one of the key. It's amazing what this is bringing. I mean, imagine all the gamers understand this, where you'll have a certain skin or you built something online. Now you're going to have a bridge into the real world as a fiat bridge, or you can keep it in the crypto world where you can exchange or even sell that asset as an NFT, for example, to someone else. And that's the transfer of value that you're going to start seeing more heavily out there. And you also witnessed this on one of your guests, B. Smith, with someone who had a show that was demonetized, banned, and they launched their own. I don't know if the time is now to bring it up, but if you could expand on that, that's where you see the decentralization and the access of Web3.
Yeah. So I actually had, it's funny that Don's watching this too, because Don and I we made a video about how, adult entertainers, specifically with OnlyFans, were losing some subscribers and could this be a sign of recession? And just so happens that the one person that we were talking about reached out to us. I ended up having her on my show. And it was actually a really enlightening conversation about how, centralized, transactions such as Visa, American Express, MasterCard, the credit card companies were preventing or put pressure on OnlyFans to take the adult content off of their platform. And so she decided to create her own platform where cryptocurrency was the only way to transact. and it eliminates the risk there of being of losing their business because of monetary policy or whatever they want. Basically dictating how the types of things that can be transacted, I guess.
So it frees up the transfer, peer-to-peer transfer. So if someone is, if there is any business that there's a great following to it, you remove the friction that restricts you in terms of the transfer value.
And you protect yourself. I mean, she could have lost her entire livelihood because of something like that. And now that risk has been removed.
And that livelihood was triggered by COVID also, the transition into that. So imagine a double whammy, one where she couldn't perform her day job because of the COVID breakout, and now couldn't perform her new job because of the restrictions put on her. So you can see the importance of this technology being deployed in the world.
And I'm going to throw something else in there too. This is crazy because you're talking about a completely legitimate, as far as the US is concerned, a completely legitimate business that was taken away, not because it was harmful to others or illegal, illicit. It's completely legitimate. You're seeing the same thing happen in the cannabis world as well. I mean, we have legal cannabis products in certain states. We have legality everywhere. In the state of Texas, I have a store, completely legal products, and there are multiple payment processors that will not touch my field of business, regardless of, I mean, I have city permits, I have state permits, I have everything 100% open, IRS tax returns, and nope, we're not going to mess with you. So to anybody that says cryptocurrency does not have a place in the future, or it's only used for criminals, I very much disagree. There's legitimate entities that are being told and being restricted, being told they can't, be monetized. This is why we need crypto.
And that's why it's going to be a warm winter, MetaFam. It's because the building, the construction is happening while the market tries to decide where it's going. We who have been in here know it's being built out. So
I was just about to say this, and Don and I are on the same wavelength. He said old heads are filtering out, and as long as the government gets their cut, it'll go. I was to piggyback on that. I think that while there's still a lot of people that need to adopt cryptocurrency and Bitcoin in particular, I think there's far more adoption now than there was even 4 years ago during the last crash. So I think that as more and more people warm up to cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, I think that we'll see warmer and warmer winters. Would anyone disagree with that?
No, because we're like Peter said, we're at the very beginning. So it's going to be very hard to throttle that down in its explosive growth as the world adopts it.
I get so excited just thinking about this next phase of our, and I say our, but Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency economies and economies at scale. We are, in my opinion, and I don't think I'm wrong on this at all. And now, I'm speaking to a small audience here, but the conviction is still the same, is that we are going to see more growth in the next couple of years than we've seen in the last decade. And this growth is going to be explosive. I think we have seen the last decade to be exactly the pattern necessary for the growing. I think we have seen the last decade to be exactly the pattern necessary for the growing. I think we have seen the last decade.
Hey, Jaime, if you don't mind, this is wild. While Peter figures out what's going on, go into the private chat and hit that Twitter link that I literally just got from one of my buddies in Canada. As we are speaking of this, I mean, these are certain things where you're like, I don't know if I believe in coincidence, because I just got tagged in a Discord and sent a Twitter link. And if you could just pull that up, Jaime.
Yes, ma'am. Right
here. He tagged me in it because of the business that I was just referring to. So I don't know if he's watching on stream or if this is just, amazing timing. But right here, Web3 and the future of cryptocurrency payments. And you can blow it up, Jaime, real big just to get to the tweet. And I mean, this isn't a plug for Subterra or anything like that. But if you scroll down a little bit to that chart right here, this is a company right now. They are on the Cosmos ecosystem that is working on payments for Web3 in cryptocurrency to where it would be to the likes of using Visa or MasterCard. You wouldn't even know you're using cryptocurrency here. I just find it amazing that as we're talking about this, I get tagged in this, and there's entire companies, including ours, that are working on getting cryptocurrency payments generalized so that, you know, on the front end of things, you don't even know you're using cryptocurrency, but on the back end of things with businesses, this is a major deal right here. I mean, I at my store, I get charged an absolute premium just for having a payment processor, 2% of every sale plus 10%. I mean, it's insane. It really, really eats away at your bottom line. So you have companies working on this for Web3 purposes. Just amazing.
Does every viewer understand this? We are building. While the market watches the price, we are building today. It's inevitable. This is the future.
Good stuff.
Yep.
I knew there was something else coming up on our docket, Brad.
Yeah. So
which is related to all this we're speaking to.
which direction are we going into? Was it the USDT banned addresses?
Ooh-wee.
That's a juicy one.
This is a juicy.
I'll let you run, Brad. Lead us the way.
I thought this one was one that Tampa had brought up. Or which one?
Right. Yeah, this is.
So as part of the transition, so let me segue into this then.
Sure.
So we're building, but we're also seeing the importance of crypto regulation, the stable coin regulation, which Tamp has gone into depth ever since we began the streams. It's going to be critical for the future and adoption of crypto overall. One of the points mentioned was, and even Kevin O'Leary mentioned, as soon as we have regulation come out, it opens up the door for institutions to be able to offer it to the general public as part of an investment package. So it opens things up for the general world, not just the qualified investors or people that have the means and the qualifications to do so, despite the fact that retail, some of us that have been in the market for a while, do understand the technology. So this is going to be critical once we bring this in. And there was something you saw here, Tam.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, we just talk about, you know, the cryptocurrency space, and Bitcoin especially, Bitcoin is truly decentralized. There is no middleman. You can't stop it. You can't shut it down. I don't need you to make a transaction from me to Jaime. Well, Tether, which for those of you might not know, Tether is the largest used stable coin in the world. And it is backed 1-to-1 against the US dollar. Well, if the whole point of cryptocurrency is decentralization and the inability to get blacklisted, right here, this report right here shows that 716 different Tether-based addresses have been blacklisted from using their stablecoin to the tune of about $422 million. If that's not or if that's not centralized, then I'm not sure what is. So now we have this conundrum, right? We need Tether because Tether is going to be the basis for regulation, which is going to allow institutional and sovereign money into the space, which we want, which we need. So we want regulation. We want the government to step in, and a stable coin is the easiest target, specifically Tether, because it's harder to go against somebody like Maker or some of these other DAO-based stable coins. It's going to be a harder fight for regulators. So Tether's going to be the one that's going to get regulated first. But we are centralized here. And this, I'm going to segue a little bit, but this is why the Lunas and Terras of the world exist and all those before them, because they see this as a problem, but it is our double-edged sword, right? This is the thing that makes Tether great, and that also is the killer, is that it is the one that we want regulated. It's going to be the one regulated, but that also makes it centralized in this way. So you have these other stable coins coming, trying to be truly decentralized, and those experiments have failed, and we know that. It is well documented. But we have this great part of being early right now where we have to understand these are growing pains. Okay. If Tether gets regulated like we want, we're going to have to understand that it's not centralized. But does that take away the complete tune of the decentralized cryptocurrency space? There's a lot to unpack here. I want to hear other people's thoughts.
So one of the critical items we're going to see is not just Tether, because those of you who have been following the Tether drama for a while, as Temp said, they have one-to-one. Well, if you look after their lawsuit with a New York State attorney, now they changed their phrasing to and commercial paper. So it's no longer one-to-one. So it's almost like an investment. And then you also have the DAO type stable coins, and you have USDC, which is backed by Goldman Sachs and a few other large institutions. So the regulatory rules coming out to regulate the stable coin industry, or in the crypto world, will be a watershed moment for crypto adoption, because now that opens up the market for institutions to now trade. For example, like we mentioned last week, BlackRock bringing up regulation and looking into investing with USDC and opening it up spot Bitcoin price spot purchases. So that literally will open up the floodgates into activity, global activity and adoption.
So what is really unique and really, I think, interestingly specific to Bitcoin, not cryptocurrency, but Bitcoin as a whole, is that whenever you hear anything about Bitcoin, let's just do a quick mental exercise. So when you hear Bitcoin and regulation, what does the usual retail world think? Positive thoughts or negative thoughts?
Typically negative.
That's right. They usually think negative. And so I can give you so many more examples of whenever you hear Bitcoin and fill in the blank, you usually should respond opposite. So of what the crowd says. And so when they say Bitcoin regulation, everyone says, oh, that's when you should be like, fuck yeah, bro. This is going to be, because the real opportunists are the ones that are going to say, I can't control regulation. I don't have any power. I'm just little old me. So guess what little old me does? Little old me is not try to fight the powers, is they say, oh, okay, so you're going to add some new constraints. You're going to add some new walls. Well, we at DCTV and we at Medify, we're problem solvers. So wonderful. And so I think if you continue to take a look at a Bitcoin in the opposite light of any newscast and do the opposite, you'll probably be richly rewarded, as we have over the years.
Yep, and I agree. And you mentioned Tether's lawsuits. Let's not forget that Tether has been sued by the state of New York 3 different times, and they have won every single time, right? Like our U.S. banks operate at about 10% of their market cap, right? And Tether's 1-to-1, and we're giving Tether shit like they're doing something, that is egregious for having a 1-to-1 backing. And let's be honest, on all these lawsuits, they've come out ahead. If we think they're disclosing everything, I think that's a naive stance to take. I mean, if somebody came in and audited me in my shop, I'm going to answer exactly what they want. I'm going to fully cooperate, but I'm not going to tell you everything. Why would I? And why would Tether? Right? So, I mean, that's, I think, a big misjudgment made by the industry is that Bitcoin and Tether, that their reserves that it audited are the limits of their capital. I think that is completely wrong. I think their reserves are just what they asked for, and there's so much more beyond that. But for whatever reason, we have a hard stop in our brains on what we're reading as being reported. They gave us the news of what was asked for and answered. We didn't go beyond that. And to think Tether doesn't have reserves beyond what was asked of them, I think is naive. I don't think solvency is a problem at all for Tether. I think their biggest worry is sovereignty. Right? It's not a solvency issue for Tether. It's a sovereignty issue. So I I think perception of U.S. regulators, is that Tether is an attack on USD sovereignty. And so they're going to come in and regulate it. And like Peter said, I absolutely agree with the regulation. It needs to come in, but there is a balance between decentralization and regulation that is going to have to play out. And not everybody's going to be happy at any one time until we're well out of this early phase of cryptocurrency.
Absolutely. So regulation is good. And you can see it coming. So Don asked, or he mentioned, so banks decide what the USD is worth and each country does as well. So how would they determine the price of Bitcoin, or does it stay on a supply or demand basis? So what's been occurring lately, and you'll see it in the market, is ETFs. They've pulled out futures. It's all about futures, and it's highly speculative when you look at how futures works. Now, all of a sudden, you have BlackRock pulling out spot Bitcoin purchases for their investors. And these aren't your regular investors. This is for big investors. So now that answers the question at the bottom, or does it stay on a supply or demand basis? Spot Bitcoin is a supply and demand and not a necessarily highly speculative engine into the Bitcoin realm or buying into Bitcoin. So to understand that globally, and they work on a global basis with Kevin O'Leary involved also, you see that globally the adoption is going to be on the supply demand. That's where the biggest push will be. The time to build is now.
Yep.
Absolutely. All right. So, I mean, that was an excellent topic. I wanted to shift gears a little bit. Greg had brought up an interesting article this morning from Barron's. And, one of the big questions that he asked, I just lost it. Here we go. He asked, if we believe that, just kind of going back into macroeconomic topics here, do we believe that there's going to be a housing market recession, or are we just going to level off? And this Barron's article basically talks about how things have been slowing down considerably. If you guys have been keeping track, and Don can, I'm sure, probably give some feedback on this as well. We should have had him in the stream this morning, but you can certainly put it in the chat, Don. We've seen rates pull back from 6% to 5.5%. All of a sudden cured affordability challenges that are fairly acute in most key markets. This is from one of the analysts. And what I want to emphasize here is just from 3 years ago, we saw mortgages double when you take interest rates into consideration, not mortgage rates, but just mortgages in general, double. But when you combine interest rates as well as housing going up by 20%. So that could incite a recession, but what we're seeing is, at least in my opinion, wages go up too, and maybe not enough to keep up with inflation. But I think that because we're seeing wages go up and jobs are still very strong, that we can absorb some of that. I don't think we can absorb a doubling of mortgages, but we are seeing interest rates come back down a little bit. I think that what we could see more or less is like a small slowing, but I don't think that there's any risk, in my opinion, of seeing any kind of like 2008 type crisis because of, and that was a whole different ball of wax. I think we could see a little bit of a slowing in housing sales once, interest rates come back down to reasonable levels and so on and so forth. So I think that we could see a little bit of a leveling off, but I just don't see how an actual all-out housing recession takes place.
Do we want to let Don in? Don said he'll pop on in.
Don wants to jump. I don't know if you can get
pop
that
in.
link.
I'll share him the link.
Yeah.
Okay, beautiful.
And Jaime, if you could just blow the article up just a little bit too.
That's actually on Brad's machine.
Oh, it's on Brad. Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha. Where you want it?
Just blowing it up just so we can see what's going on. I don't know.
Sure.
I'm more in the camp that we will have another housing recession. I absolutely am. I don't know when it will happen, but we are on a very similar trajectory as we were the 08, 09 housing market. And that was an impossible bubble to burst that we all know burst. I definitely felt that one. Have you ever had to sell a house by bringing $21,000 to the table? Because I did. Had I known what I know now, not financial advice, but I'd have instead just taken the keys and mailed them to Bank of America, who held my mortgage, and said, this is your problem now. But I didn't at the time because I try to be a morally good person. And I instead took $21,000 to the table to sell a house. Lesson learned, made a memory, as my stepmom would say. We made a memory on that one. But I am of the belief that the housing market is going to take a significant dive down. I think some areas will be hit much harder than others. But I think we're going to have a supply and demand issue with the number of houses that are empty versus number of bodies to fill them.
Do you think that the prices are going to come down or at least stabilize? Do you think they'll get back to within reason?
I think to a degree. What I'm anxious to see is if the same thing happens in the used and new car inventory world. That one is one that I don't think is going to move much. I think houses will come back down to more quote unquote realistic levels, but I do not see the vehicle world ever dropping back down anywhere near what they were before this wild pandemic and chip restriction craze.
Yes, absolutely. And the other item, it's going to be a function of the interest rates also. As interest rates go up, of course, your mortgage payments will go up.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So it will affect these. And Don Franz coming on. He had to reset Google Chrome. He's coming.
Of course.
But Samuel Anderson believes this will happen around March 2023 in June. So yeah, we'll see that.
I'm definitely thinking that the housing crisis is inevitable.
Well, so I'm interested
in the house.
There's the man. Can you play us a little piece on that piano, by the way, Don?
Yeah, I only know Mozart, you know.
Oh, dude, it's so sexy. It's so sexy.
You know, just to kind of expand on that a little bit, because and Don, you can feel free to take this from me but Tam was talking about inventory and supply and demand, you know, and you know this as a real estate agent, that supply has been in short order, and it kind of, to me, at least from what I've been seeing, it seems to continue to be in short order. It seems to be that there is, and it's alleviated some, but not enough, that we're still seeing a shortage in homes available. Can you expand on that? Is that still the case or no?
Yeah. New homes just are not, I guess, being tossed up. I don't know, some of the build quality, you would think it's just getting tossed up. But no, new homes just aren't being built at the rate we need to keep up. So demand is definitely still there. We haven't seen it. Man, I gotta be careful what I say. I don't want to say alter. We're definitely seeing it. As far as pushback, I feel like I'm stuttering all over myself right now.
No, well, explain what you mean when you say that new homes aren't being built, because at least I've been in 3 different states in what feels like the last 2 weeks. And one thing that I see in every single one of those states is building everywhere, construction everywhere, whether it's commercial, residential. So kind of go into what you mean by that.
And it depends on the part of the country, by the way.
Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Texas.
Yes, that's the
East Coast.
That's because everyone's leaving California. They finally realized we need to get out of here. So Texas. It's still just not enough. So we're still seeing that. Like, there's reports you can pull up for how much is like usually being built per now, and it's drastically less. I know lumber took a hit, and then there's just a materials end is just getting destroyed, or it still isn't back to normal levels. So, you know, either way, whether you have, because you can still have new homes, but it's the, I guess, the lack of, you got to be able to match it. So as long as the demand is still there. Man,
so what about like you saw during especially the pandemic and different movements causing riots in major cities? What about the mass exodus of people from cities into what is just going to be called collectively as suburbs? I mean, is that not home building and growth just in other areas, but you're basically leaving major cities abandoned?
They're not abandoned because people still want to move into them. It affected maybe the pricing of it. Was it Boise, Idaho? Everyone tried to flood there too, but now everyone's leaving because they got to go back to work. But people are always needing to get bigger or downsize or relocate from work. There's constantly moving that has to happen regardless of the housing industry. And so now it's like, my job's relocated to this area. What can I do? Where can I live? So new construction, just might not. It's just not enough to fill all of that.
Gotcha.
Is it still supply chain constraints? Is that really the root of all of it?
I think a lot of it. One of the guys in my chat has to do a lot with that. There's only like 3 big suppliers, and they're just locked. There's nothing they can't get enough to sell.
Is that like lumber, or you know what kind of materials? That's lumber in particular. Okay.
Yeah.
So the raw materials to put the houses together is bottom line what's slowing the purchase.
Oh, it's insane. My fiance, her parents moved out of New York into Connecticut, and they were supposed to have a completion date on the house that they're building in Connecticut. It was last December was a completion date. As of February, they still weren't in. They finally got in a few months after that, but they still have builders going into the house this day to finish this thing or install this appliance or whatever, just because they don't have it. I mean, it's just wild, the backup.
I've seen a lot of extensions. I saw not a lot, but I can only imagine how much we saw nationwide was how many people tried to play the lumber cost game, and in mid construction are like, let's stall this out. Let's try to wait for a better price, because either they flat out weren't approved or they thought they were paying too much and didn't want to.
It's the equivalency of Bitcoin miners. I mean, it's the same thing. When power gets to be too much to build, sometimes the best option is just to stop.
Yeah, shut it down.
Yeah, shut it down until things return back to some sort of normalcy.
Yeah. What I will say to touch on yours, though, is I don't think we'll see anything like 2008. 2008 was just blatant fraud. I could have just walked into a bank and said, I make $1 million a year. And they're like, sweet. Give me a
here's your $20 million house.
Yeah.
Right.
In fact,
Needed income.
I went to go buy my first car. It was during all of this, and someone stole my identity, and I had a house.
Oh my God.
And now I'm in high school, and I had a house. I was like, he's like, you got like a cosigner? You don't have any credit yet? And I was like, no. I'm brand new to this world. He's like, what about that house? Could you just maybe get like a line of credit on it? I said, what part of my application isn't clear? I don't have a house. I still live with my parents.
That's
like,
fair.
So on your credit report, then that's how you discovered.
Yeah.
Sweet Lord.
So what's the breaking point then? If it's not the housing market, are we just going to keep focusing on inflation and the dollar losing its value is going to be the breaking point this go around? Because you cannot print $6 trillion worth of money in essentially 30 months and not expect something to break somewhere. And if it doesn't come from overinflated housing prices, where's the breaking point then?
Why can't we print $6 trillion?
Why can we not print $6 trillion in 30 months and not expect backlash?
At this point, it's an Excel document. I mean, who actually?
Yeah, I do agree. We should just use Doge because it's infinite as well. Why not? Maybe Elon is right.
Yeah,
not really. I don't believe that.
More theatrical at this point. Like, oh no, the debt ceiling, and then we all know we're going to raise it, so it doesn't actually matter. But
right. And normally I would say that would work because other countries are going to do the same thing, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like a rising tide that's just bullshit on all fronts, but everybody's doing it, so it works, right? But if we're having unrest in major places, whether it be Russia, China, or anywhere in between, or people want to break off and go to a Bitcoin, standard, i.e. El Salvador, if Abu Dhabi does it, then now what? Because that rising tide isn't going to rise everybody. There's going to be some big holes there.
Yeah. How big are those other holes, though, with those other countries? China's a big economy, but not to go too patriot, but like at the end, when it comes off to someone's starts sinking, we're real quick to just cut that off and say that's their. We'll send you our thoughts and prayers. That's about what it'll boil down to.
I think we'll go to war with them. before we let them not float our tide with us, right? If we're raising and you don't, and that's going to collapse our economy or have us default, an actual default of our national debt, we'll just go to war with you. We'll make up something and go to war. It's
Yeah,
probably
we're all
likely.
about that. We'll come up with an excuse.
Yeah.
Why we got the best army.
So that's how we do it.
But that's the danger of this whole thing is if we do let those printers go, we go full Zimbabwe. What will the outcome be? I mean, it's
Scary.
how do you regulate? How do you control? How do you soft land when you've given the first dab of cocaine to someone and now they want it as a solution to their problems? You become tweakers.
Yeah, I think 100
Yeah.
years ago we would have crashed.
Yeah.
But with the way technology is, like things are already just moving. We'll just come up with a new excuse or a new reason to kind of keep things afloat. We just keep plugging holes. And I don't know. I mean, I agree with everything you guys are saying. I don't believe the government would let us at this point. We'll just come with another reason, or look over here while we do something over here behind the
Flag
scenes.
the dog.
Big something. Yeah.
Hey, it's fair. I hate to say it, but I hate agreeing with you because morally it's just so backwards and just messed up. But I do tend to agree with that's how it'll play out is something the government just won't let it fall. We'll go to war. We'll do something weird. We'll just forgive debt. We'll just print money. We'll just give $600 to everybody. And then we'll have a virus and who knows, but something will be done to distract and then, kick the can down the road.
China right now is going to be the best example of probably what's going to happen because right now they're in an actual bubble. We're not in a real estate bubble. Real estate just got a little excited. It's not a bubble. China actually is. They have ghost cities.
Yes, and also bank runs too. I've seen that.
They tried and they had to shut it all down. And so, if you watch all the YouTube thumbnails, all that, they're in a colossal just cluster. But they're already working on bailouts. So we'll see. Like, if there's one thing I trust is not the government, but they will not let anything look bad. So they'll come up with something, and then all of a sudden,
I just need to take a shower for agreeing with you, man. Because you're right. But I need a shower.
Yeah, there's what we're taught to believe, what we believe, and then like what's actually going to pan out. It's like, well, we know this is coming around the corner. Like, even in the movie, what was it, The Big Short? He was so excited. He's like, oh, I nailed the housing market. He's like, oh, they're bailing out. And they were so surprised at that. Like, well, it's just going to happen again. We've seen this trick a few times.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right.
I think we've stopped living in a world where, large companies, whether they deserve to be there or not, are just going to be there because they're too big to fail. That one domino falls and it knocks over too many other ones. And to your point, Don, like there's they're going to figure out a way to make it work.
Yeah, there's a lot of small companies that should have failed a long time ago. So either this is who's the guy? I just watched this interview. Is it Harry Dent? He was on with the guy who Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Kiyosaki.
Robert Kiyosaki.
Yeah, Robert, but he had somebody else on. I think it's Harry Dent, and I remember thinking Harvey Dent. But he thinks the biggest crash of all time is coming worldwide. Like he's in the sky is falling camp. So, and I guess that's our only next one because we've given participation medals out to everybody, even small companies. It's like, man, if you suck, you suck. Or if you just didn't have the right business practice, like that's what it is. But we didn't allow that. We printed off enough money for anybody to just pretend they got a business and get by. So we have to keep on this joke we have going forever. Or the other side of that coin is it does crash. How do you just quietly pull all that back?
So here's where the grand experiment of Bitcoin comes in.
Right.
It's a deflationary asset.
Yes.
And what a coincidence that one of the largest dominoes on the planet, BlackRock, is now making moves on an international level to invest spot Bitcoin, not futures, which is leveraged, but spot. Allow that access.
And that's
I believe we may see that Bitcoin kick into its purpose and reason to exist.
agreed.
Point.
The best word you said in all that is experiment. And that's what we keep telling people. Like, listen, every single crypto that comes out, every protocol, anybody who tries to do something different, whether it's a better way of organizing, whether it's a stable coin, whatever, they're all trying to solve the issues that we're talking about right here. They will not all win. But the beauty of cryptocurrency is, unlike what Don just said, it's hard to bail out anybody in crypto. If you fail, right? You're going to have to build it back different. You're going to have to build it back better. You don't just get handed something and said, well, it's okay. Just keep going, keep doing more of what you're doing that got you in the mess in the first place, and we'll continue to reward you. Mm-hmm. So it's everything is an experiment. You got to remember that when investing in these stuff.
It's the cocoon phase.
Yeah.
Well said,
here at MetaFam and Decentralized TV. And Greg, you said something. My apologies.
Well said, Tamp.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Join us in this experiment. Go ahead, Don.
I'm just curious to see how this all pans out. I'm excited for it. I've been what. I don't know why I suck. The way I've been describing it is like it's just so early that the big players are just putting their pieces on the board. So when we see that, once all their pieces are on, they'll get the game figured out. Then they'll let everyone else in. Right now, we're like the conspiracy theories of the world.
So back to the beginning.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, back to the beginning, Don. Do you think Bitcoin is bottomed? That's what we started with.
No, hopefully not. No.
Hopefully not. I got buys, Tam. Come on.
Well, that like it's still supply and demand. Again, that's what I was going to ask you guys last week, because we were talking about the hash rate and all that. Like, that's cool and all, but now that we have institutional money on, are they worried about that, or are they still going to dump orders, drop it down so they can buy it cheaper? Like in the stock world, that's called a stop hunt. They'll just sell a huge order, drop it down. Everybody else panics and sells because people are predictable. They're easy and emotional. So then it drops even further. Everyone wants to play super trader, so their stops hit, sends it even further. Now they can pick it up even cheaper. So why not send it down? If that's the future, they want to get it as cheap as possible. And they're a lot better at it than most retail players are.
Absolutely. They know how to wag that dog for sure.
There is some institutional money in, no doubt. Your Michael Saylors of the world and your other
investment.
Yeah.
JP Morgan's now moved in.
But they're not in the way we think they're in. Institutional money is not here yet and will not be until we're regulated. They're on the sidelines waiting. They want in, but they're not going to touch it in a manner to truly swing the price to the likes of what we're talking about. They're not going to touch it until regulation is there. They're not going to. That's why we want the regulation, right? That's our main circular argument we keep coming back to.
So I don't follow the news. I try to stay out of the noise. What are most of the headlines saying right now? Is it bullish or bearish Bitcoin?
You're starting to see a blend of the two. And a lot of FUD in terms of there's a lot of shorts coming in. So I don't know if there will be a short squeeze before we see the next leg down done. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but you are seeing bearish turn just because it came down back to a double bottom formation on the weekly. It's clearer to see.
Okay. Sometimes when you just get flooded one direction, that's usually the opposite way to take. That's why I was curious if you guys, being in every day, if you saw a bunch of bullish or bearish.
Yeah, I'm still on the idea I held a while back, where I think the bottom is in. I think we will see a dip below current prices again, but I do think the bottom is in, and I think it's all because we're so close to November. I think in November we start rocket shipping. But I think November is the beginning of send it, and we will see a dip before then, though. We're just too close, in my opinion.
So you guys were talking about tech stocks. What do you think happens with tech?
Well, I think tech is deflationary too. So I would venture to say that we're probably still see more treacherous movement to the downside, but I think we're getting close. The risk reward on tech stocks is starting to get really, really good, in my opinion.
And they're the ones that lead usually there'll be outliers for sure. Winners, losers. So it's just picking the right ones.
Yeah. I think as far as the overall markets go, so if you guys think crypto follows that, my opinion there is that the bottom's already in, then the top is in for a while. At that point, we sit sideways. So maybe that is. So what if the market goes sideways? Does crypto rally? What do you guys think there? I mean, traders will make money because we got a pretty wide range from top to bottom, from the market high to the market low. If the bottom's already in, then we sit in that range for a year.
We could, but with the election coming up, and again, it all revolves around regulation. If we get regulation and that institutional money comes in, I do agree. I think we'll rocket ship back up to the $60,000-ish area with Bitcoin, and then we probably will go sideways for a long while there.
I agree with Tamp on that one.
Yeah.
Once regulation kicks in, we should see that should be fuel.
Mm-hmm.
Because now you're actually getting, instead of a stable coin that prints money out of the air, we'll have fiat printed out of the air, but backed by government. So
yeah.
I bet we at least make it to 80.
And you're very well could be right, 100%.
If we push up, that'll be the third mainstream time they've watched it push up, come down, push up again even higher. So if it goes back up to that 70 mark, everyone's going to assume it's going even higher. So then more FOMO comes in. So I bet each leg for a while will be a little bit higher.
I would agree.
Yeah. Same here.
Yep. All good stuff today, guys. We filled up the full hour. Don, thanks so much for popping on here impromptu. And Greg had to leave, but we appreciate him being on as well. Just a great way to close out the show, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you hit that thumbs up on your way out the door. We certainly would appreciate it. And join us back here tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern time, where we chat about whatever else is going on in the markets of crypto and traditional finance. And we'll catch you in the next one.
Have a good one, everyone.
All right. See you later.
See ya.